My wife, the CEO, blocked the entrance to my own luxury hotel, laughing that I couldn't afford to enter. Her sister joined her, whispering that I shouldn't embarrass the family. They had no idea I owned the entire building and everything inside it. My security chief approached the door. Family blindness costs dearly. You ever have one of those nights that feels like the universe put on sunglasses just to avoid eye contact with you? Yeah, that was me, standing outside the Blue Raven Hotel, the crown jewel of my career, my baby, my pride. Except tonight, I was apparently an uninvited guest at my own damn party. I'm holding my key card like it's a magic ticket that suddenly stopped working, and right there in front of the revolving glass doors is my wife Clara, looking every bit like the final boss in the game of public humiliation. She's got that smirk that could curdle milk and ruin lives. "You can't seriously think you're coming in," she says, voice dripping with mock concern, like she's worried the doormat might catch feelings. And next to her, her sister Sophie, giggling behind a champagne flute, leans in and whispers, "Please, Leo, don't embarrass the family." "Oh, sweetheart, that ship sailed somewhere around the time your sister decided to cosplay as a hotel dictator in heels." The audacity was Olympic level. Guests in tuxedos and sparkly dresses were streaming in, doing that fake polite thing where they look away but still watch every second. My fingers were tingling with that hot-wired mix of anger and disbelief that only betrayal can summon. 10 years ago, I was the broke dreamer with blueprints, a tool belt, and a caffeine addiction big enough to power New York. I left her dad's crusty plumbing firm to chase an idea everyone called insane, a luxury boutique hotel experience for the soul, whatever the hell that meant back then. Spoiler, it meant 15 hotels now, 5 countries, and a net worth that'd make Forbes blush. But apparently, I don't look rich enough in my black polo and sneakers. Joke's on them. These sneakers cost more than Sophie's entire fashion collection, and I'm not exaggerating. I once saw her try to return a handbag because it wasn't Instagram photogenic. Clara crosses her arms, blocking the scanner like she's security detail for the royal crown. "This is a private event," she says, stressing private, like it's a word I've never heard before. The gall. Private. I repeat, feigning confusion. "That's interesting. You holding a seance in there, or just another taxpayer-funded ego trip?" She rolls her eyes, that practiced motion every married man recognizes as both a warning and a taunt. "Leo, this is business. Investors, partners, real people." Real people. Wow. That one hit like a punch wrapped in designer perfume. I glance at the giant Blue Raven logo spinning proudly above the door. My signature, my literal handwriting turned into a brand, and I can't help but laugh. Real people, huh? Guess that makes me the ghost. She doesn't even flinch. "Go home, Leo," she says, with the tone of someone dismissing a landscaper who's overtrimmed the roses. I stare at her, wondering when exactly my marriage turned into an episode of Shark Tank, where I'm the unpaid intern pitching feelings. Sophie chimes in again, clearly enjoying the show. "Come on, Leo, this isn't personal." "Oh, it's very personal, princess. I spent the last decade building this palace, and now I'm standing outside like a lost DoorDash driver who can't find the right suite number." I glance at the line forming behind me. Some influencer couple pretending to be important, a bald banker sweating in his tux, 2 reporters checking badges. All of them watching me get turned away from my own hotel. If karma were a sport, Clara would be winning gold tonight. The valet, a kid named Marco I hired myself, avoids eye contact like he's witnessing a crime scene. Can't blame him. The man signs your paycheck, but his wife signs your humiliation. "So let me get this straight," I say, stepping closer, lowering my voice. "You're saying I, the founder and owner of the Blue Raven Hospitality Group, am not allowed into the Blue Raven Hotel because..." Clara's lips curl. "Because you look uninvited." I blink. "That's your logic? You want me to go home and change into something more wealthy before I enter the building I literally built brick by brick?" She scoffs. "Oh please, you hired contractors." I bite my tongue so hard I might need stitches. This woman. 10 years ago, she was the one sitting in my beat-up Civic eating gas station pizza while I sketched the first Blue Raven concept on a napkin. Now she's guarding the front door like she's protecting Buckingham Palace from riffraff. I let out a long breath and grin. "You know what, Clara? You're right. I shouldn't come in. After all, I'd hate to ruin your big night pretending to be the boss. She narrows her eyes, clearly unsure if I'm serious or about to detonate her ego in public. Thank you, she says finally, turning to wave at an arriving guest, some corporate parasite with too much gel and not enough morals. I take a step back, watching the glass doors spin open and shut, carrying in people who think I'm the help. The rage is simmering, quiet, dangerous, the kind of anger that doesn't shout, it builds plans. I can already see tomorrow's headline. Local wife bans billionaire husband from his own hotel. Film at 11. I pocket my key card, nod at Marco, and say, "Don't worry, kid. You're doing fine." Then I give Clara one last look. The kind where you smile, but your eyes say you just made a very expensive mistake. She doesn't get it yet. She thinks she's won. But what she doesn't know is that my patience has an expiration date, and tonight's the sell-by. I turn toward the street, pretending to leave, my sneakers tapping on the pavement like a countdown clock. 10 years I built this empire, and tonight's the night they all find out who actually signs the damn checks. I pause at the corner, glance back one last time at the glowing sign that reads the Blue Raven, and whisper under my breath, "Locked out of my own palace? Fine. Let's see how they handle the king walking back in." You ever meet a family so self-absorbed they could turn a therapy session into a red carpet event? Congratulations, that's the Lawsons. My in-laws treat delusion like a team sport, complete with uniforms, cheerleaders, and instant replay. You'd think marrying into a clan that calls themselves refined elites would come with, I don't know, a country club membership or at least decent wine at dinner. Wrong. It came with group humiliation on speed dial and a permanent front row seat to my own roast. See, Clara's dad, good old Mr. Lawson, runs a middle-tier accounting firm called Lawson & Associates, which sounds fancy until you realize the associates are his wife and a printer that jams every time someone mentions taxes. He walks around in his off-the-rack suits talking about financial strategy, like balancing a spreadsheet makes him Gordon Gekko. Meanwhile, I've got 15 hotels across 3 continents, but somehow I'm still the dreamer who lucked out. Her mom, Barbara, is a walking neighborhood newsletter. She collects gossip the way rich people collect yachts. Every conversation with her starts with, "Did you hear?" and ends with me mentally Googling ways to fake my own death. Then there's Sophie, Clara's younger sister. She's basically Clara's echo, but with less subtlety and worse fashion sense. She married Greg, a lawyer who brags about billing hours but still drives his dad's 2010 BMW like it's a collector's item. The man flexes a 15-year-old car like it's a Rolex. And don't even get me started on family dinners. You'd think they were hosting a corporate board meeting instead of eating chicken marsala. Everyone talks in passive-aggressive riddles. "So, Leo, how's business?" Translation: "Are you still poor?" I sit there, swirling my wine, trying not to mention the fact that my company's net worth could buy and sell their entire zip code twice over. But I stay quiet, because nothing scares the Lawsons more than facts. They love their illusions too much. See, to them, appearances are currency. You could be drowning in debt, but if your Instagram has pictures of you holding a glass of rose on a yacht you rented for 30 minutes, you're doing well. I once overheard Barbara tell someone at brunch that Clara married a hard-working man with potential. Potential. Like I'm a lottery ticket she's hoping to scratch someday. The woman has seen my Forbes profile, for crying out loud. But apparently that's just PR fluff. She once told me to my face that real success shows in posture and pedigree. I told her posture doesn't pay bills. She didn't laugh. These people wouldn't know real wealth if it sponsored their vacation. They measure success by dinner invitations and brand names, not assets and returns. Clara fits right in. She learned from the best. To them, I'm the quiet husband who builds hotels, like I'm still hammering nails and unclogging drains between lunch breaks. It's hilarious, because while they're busy inflating their LinkedIn titles, I'm negotiating acquisitions in Dubai. But I let them believe their narrative, because sometimes the most powerful position in a room full of egos is the man everyone underestimates. Still, it's exhausting. You know how people say marriage means joining families? Yeah, in my case, it was like merging with a circus where everyone wants to be the ringmaster, but nobody knows how to tame the lions. The irony of it all could power a comedy tour. I remember one Thanksgiving when Mr. Lawson decided to teach me about investments. The man lectured me about compound interest for 40 minutes while I sat there smiling, knowing I made more in passive income that week than he did in his entire fiscal quarter. Then he had the audacity to ask me for hotel discounts. Sophie piped in with her usual nonsense. Leo, you should really wear suits more often. People might take you seriously. Sure, because nothing screams success like sweating through polyester at a barbecue. Greg the lawyer backed her up, nodding like a bobblehead. She's right. Presentation is everything. I almost asked him how presentation was working out for his expired car registration sticker. But I held back, because I've learned that silence makes them more nervous than insults. They're the kind of people who mistake calm confidence for cluelessness. And Clara, God bless her manipulative little heart, started using that to her advantage. The more I stayed silent, the more she leaned into this simple husband role. She'd tell her family, Leo's just happy to support me. He's not really into the business world. I once caught Sophie whispering, he's lucky she married him before he lost that plumbing job. That one almost made me spit my drink. These people really think the man who owns the entire Blue Raven chain is still fixing toilets for a living. And Clara? She didn't correct them. She liked it. The humble narrative made her look more successful by comparison. She got to be the polished career woman with a supportive husband who stayed out of the spotlight. Cute, until it wasn't. Because the truth is, I don't care what random strangers think, but when your own wife starts believing her own PR, you've got a problem. That's when she started going to events without me. First it was, oh, honey, it's just networking, you'd be bored. Then it was, you don't fit in with that crowd. Eventually, it was, it's better for my image if I attend solo. Image. That word should have been my cue to pack a bag. But no, I played along. I figured, let her have her moment. I was too busy running a multi-million-dollar expansion project to argue over cocktail parties. But tonight took the cake. Watching Clara and Sophie stand there at the Blue Raven entrance, my Blue Raven, blocking me like a couple of Gucci-wrapped bodyguards while guests walked past pretending not to stare, that was the universe's way of saying, hey, buddy, time to stop being the punchline. I could feel that old version of me, the hustler, the builder, the dreamer, stirring back to life. The guy who mortgaged his soul to turn blueprints into skyline art. The one who used to sleep in unfinished suites during construction because hotels weren't just a business. They were his proof of existence. I didn't claw my way up from nothing just to be treated like nothing by people who think status comes from last names instead of sweat. Standing outside that night, I realized something beautiful. I'd been too polite for too long. The Lawsons didn't respect kindness. They mistook it for weakness. And I was done playing the fool. You want a show, Clara? Fine. But remember, every circus has a ringmaster. And I built this tent. There's this funny thing about success. If you don't post it online with a motivational quote and a rented Lamborghini, people assume you're broke. Especially in-laws. Clara's family is the human embodiment of LinkedIn humble brags. So the fact that I don't flaunt my money makes them think I'm out here collecting Best Western reward points instead of running an empire. I kept my business quiet for peace. No paparazzi, no fake friends, no cousins asking for investment money. Clara used to love that about me. Said it made me real, grounded, not like other men. Cute, right? Until she realized she couldn't brag about me at brunch without using the words small business owner. Then suddenly, being real meant being irrelevant. She started shaping her narrative like she was running PR for a political campaign. Clara, the successful modern woman, married to her supportive husband who works in hospitality. Hospitality, my ass. I own the hospitality. I don't fluff pillows. I buy the buildings. But sure, honey, tell the world I'm the bellhop holding your emotional luggage. I played along because I thought we were a team, her with her fancy speeches, me with my actual accomplishments. But slowly, she started believing her own fiction. She'd attend family events solo, post captions like, so proud of how far we've come, with a picture of her standing alone in front of one of my hotels. People would comment, #BossLady, and she'd heart every single one. I became invisible in my own life, a ghost husband haunting the background of her Instagram stories. When we did appear together, I was the mystery man in the comments, like a blurry Bigfoot sighting. And it wasn't just online. In real life, too. She started treating me like background noise. At dinners, she'd interrupt me mid-sentence to explain my own point, like a human subtitle nobody asked for. She told people, Leo likes to keep things simple, as if I couldn't string a sentence together without crayons. Once, at a charity gala, my company donated $500,000. By the way, she introduced me as the guy who helps me relax when I'm not working. The silence that followed was loud enough to break glass. But oh, she smiled through it, because as long as the cameras flashed, the lies were worth it. The final straw? Tonight. Her birthday gala, hosted at the Blue Raven, our flagship hotel, the heart of my empire, the place that was supposed to celebrate us. Except us apparently didn't include me. I found out about the event from my assistant, Jenna, who showed me the flyer and said, Sir, should I block off the ballroom calendar for your wife's event? I laughed, thought it was a mistake. Nope, my name wasn't even mentioned. Clara branded the event as hosted by Clara Lawson Enterprises, which is hilarious considering her enterprise is a consultancy that's run by 3 interns and an overworked Google Calendar. And the cherry on top? The guest list included my own business partners, investors, and clients, people she invited without telling me. Imagine financing an event, approving the catering, paying for the decorations, and then getting banned from attending. That's not irony, that's performance art. Standing outside earlier, watching her turn me away while Sophie whispered, Don't embarrass us. I realized something that hit harder than betrayal. It wasn't just that Clara had forgotten who I was. It was that she didn't want to remember. The quiet husband story was too good for her brand. The problem is, ghosts don't stay quiet forever. They haunt. And tonight, I plan to do a little haunting of my own. I remember when we first opened the Blue Raven 10 years ago. Clara was there, wearing a hard hat and heels, laughing as I showed her the lobby blueprint. She said, One day, people will know your name. And I said, One day, people will know ours. Somewhere along the way, ours turned into hers. She started treating me like a stepping stone she could stand on for the perfect photo angle. I'd catch her talking about her business vision at panels, using my hotels as case studies like she built them herself. When I'd call her out, she'd roll her eyes. Leo, it's just PR. You know how it works. Yeah, I do. It works until the truth walks in wearing sneakers and holding ownership papers. It's wild how people underestimate quiet power. I could shut down every event in this city with 2 phone calls, but she thinks I'm some guy tagging along for canapes. She's not malicious, at least not at first. She's addicted to validation. Her family worships status, and she learned early that pretending is easier than earning. So she kept up appearances, and I let her, because love makes you stupid and patience makes you silent. But tonight, standing out there like a rejected Uber Eats driver, I remembered exactly who I am. I'm Leo Grant, the man who built an empire from concrete, dust, and caffeine. The man who took every insult from her family and turned it into fuel. The man who owns the Blue Raven Hotel, the floor beneath their designer heels, the chandeliers above their Botoxed heads, and the champagne in their glasses. And guess what? Ghosts don't need invitations. They just appear. So while Clara's inside soaking up fake applause for her vision, I'm out here crafting my comeback like a director setting up the perfect plot twist. There's poetic justice in knowing the same woman who's embarrassed me in front of her family will soon have to smile through the most public unmasking of her life. I didn't spend years keeping my ownership quiet because I was ashamed. I did it because I like knowing who claps for me when they don't think I'm watching. Spoiler, it wasn't her. And that's fine, because ghosts, we don't need validation. We need revenge. And sometimes, revenge looks like a press release, a signature, and a locked ballroom door that opens for only one name. Mine. Clara had her arms folded so tight you'd think she was trying to strangle herself politely. She gave me that look, half pity, half disgust, the one wives reserve for husbands who forget anniversaries or, apparently, on the wrong outfit. Leo, this is an exclusive event, she said, dragging out the word exclusive like it was her password to heaven. We can't have you walking and looking casual. Casual? I looked down at my Tom Ford shirt, crisp, tailored, subtle logo that whispered wealth to anyone who'd ever seen a tax bracket. Casual. I repeated, Clara, I'm dressed like a man who pays the lighting bill for this place. She sighed dramatically. Sophie jumped in, sensing a chance to score points. Yeah, Leo, you wouldn't understand the crowd inside. It's investors, bankers, real CEOs. I almost laughed so hard my dignity would have needed CPR. Real CEOs? Half those guys owe me thank you notes and debt extensions. I could buy their companies for sport. Right? I said, trying not to grin. Wouldn't want to lower the standards. Clara rolled her eyes like I'd just interrupted her TED Talk on class. Go home, Leo. I'll call you tomorrow. Oh, that was rich. Tomorrow. Like I was a dentist appointment she could reschedule after her lies digested. I looked at her. Perfect hair, flawless dress, everything curated to scream power, and wondered how she managed to look so small while standing on my empire. Tomorrow, I said, pretending to think. You might want to make that call from my lobby. I hear the reception's great. Her confusion was immediate, delicious. She blinked, opened her mouth, closed it again. Sophie shifted nervously. A guest brushed past, giving me the sympathetic smile people give homeless men who still look hopeful. My patience snapped in half. I straightened my sleeves, smiled, and said, "You know what? You're right, Clara. I wouldn't want to ruin your image. You go enjoy your exclusive crowd. I'll just find a way in that doesn't require your approval." Her smirk returned, brittle but smug. "Good luck with that," she said, turning away. "Oh, sweetheart, luck had nothing to do with it. I built the walls you're guarding. I designed the security system you're hiding behind. And I signed the checks of every person who's about to watch me walk through those doors like I never left." Tonight wasn't about showing up. It was about showing who's in charge. And Clara? She was about to learn that locking me out of my own hotel was the dumbest pop quiz she'd ever assigned. The thing about poetic justice is, it always shows up fashionably late, but never underdressed. Clara was halfway through her victory strut, that smug parade she does whenever she thinks she's finally put me in my place. Her champagne glass glimmered like a participation trophy for arrogance. Sophie was clinging to her side, whispering play-by-play commentary like the sidekick in a bad reality show. They thought I was leaving, and honestly, I almost wanted to, just to see how far their delusion would go. But fate, that mischievous little event planner, decided to RSVP at the perfect moment. The glass door slid open, and in walked Evan, my head of security. Now, Evan isn't just a man. He's a walking intimidation seminar. 6'3", ex-Marine, square jaw that could cut drywall, voice so deep it registers on the Richter scale. The man's shadow alone could file a harassment complaint. He scanned the crowd with the calm precision of someone who's seen actual combat and decided weddings were scarier. Then his gaze landed on me. "Everything okay here, Mr. Grant?" he said, voice carrying across the lobby like an announcement from God. Oh, the silence that followed. You could have bottled it and sold it as tension. Clara froze mid-step, her smirk melting faster than cheap mascara in the rain. Sophie's giggle died in her throat. A guest tripped on the carpet. I swear the pianist hit the wrong note upstairs because even the music flinched. Evan adjusted his earpiece and repeated, louder this time. "The executive board is waiting upstairs for you, sir. And Chef Ramirez needs final approval for the tasting menu." The world stopped spinning for a good 3 seconds. Clara's perfectly curated evening, the grand display of power, prestige, and pretense, just took a nosedive off the penthouse balcony. She turned toward Evan, face stiff, lips twitching like a marionette whose strings just snapped. Excuse me," she stammered. Evan looked at her like she was a glitch in his system. "Ma'am," he said. The way he said it, flat, polite, and completely dismissive, was an art form. I didn't have to say a word, but I did anyway, because I'm a man who believes in theatrical timing. "Perfect timing, Evan," I said, stepping forward with that calm, slow smile that should come with a warning label. "My wife was just explaining that I couldn't afford dinner here." Evan frowned. Not confusion, more like insulted dignity. "Strange," he said, glancing at me. "Since you signed everyone's paycheck. I swear, if satisfaction were an Olympic sport, I'd have broken a world record right there." The look on Clara's face was priceless, a mix of panic, denial, and the dawning horror that her entire social strategy had just been nuked by the truth. Sophie blinked so hard I thought she was trying Morse code. I tilted my head slightly, savoring the chaos. "You hear that, ladies?" I said, my voice dripping with mock innocence. "Turns out I'm not just the casual husband. I'm the employer of every soul in this building, including the guy who's about to walk us upstairs." Evan, bless his unflappable composure, stepped aside and gestured toward the entrance. After you, sir. The title hit the air like a gavel slamming down in court. Clara's jaw clenched. Sophie took a step back like she was afraid humility might be contagious. The valet, poor Marco, looked like he'd witnessed divine intervention. I didn't even bother hiding my grin as I walked past Clara. Her perfume smelled like tension and regret. Come on, I whispered as I passed. Don't be late for your own party. She didn't move, just stood there, blinking, trying to process the fact that her entire social hierarchy had been built on a house of lies, and I'd just blown the foundation to dust. Evan followed me through the revolving doors, and the air inside the lobby hit different. It wasn't just the air conditioning. It was respect, recognition, control. My control. Staff members straightened instantly. Concierges, bellhops, the pianist switching seamlessly into my favorite jazz piece. Good evening, Mr. Grant. They greeted, voices warm, respectful, genuine. It's funny how quickly people remember who's boss when the boss shows up. I glanced over my shoulder. Clara and Sophie were still at the entrance, frozen like mannequins at a clearance sale. Every guest in the vicinity was watching the scene unfold, whispers spreading faster than free Wi-Fi. That's her husband? He owns this place? No way, the quiet guy? Oh, damn. You could practically hear the collective shift in social gravity. The man they thought was invisible just turned the lights on. Evan leaned closer as we entered the elevator. You want me to clear the press from the lobby, sir? He asked quietly. I smirked. No. Let them see. I built this empire in silence. It's time they learn the language of shock. He nodded once, a ghost of a smile flickering on his face. The elevator chimed softly as the doors closed, cutting off the chaos outside. My reflection stared back at me from the mirrored wall. Black polo, calm eyes, no theatrics, no bravado. Just the quiet satisfaction of a man reclaiming what's his. You handled that perfectly, sir, Evan said. Oh, I'm not done handling, I replied. This was just the appetizer. When the elevator doors opened onto the mezzanine, the soft hum of violins filled the air, the smell of truffles and champagne drifting from the ballroom. Waiters glided by like synchronized swans. And somewhere in that golden room below, Clara's family was still basking in their imaginary importance, blissfully unaware that the script had flipped. Evan peeled off toward the security desk, leaving me to make my entrance. I paused at the balcony overlooking the grand lobby, watching Clara finally step inside, her face pale, her composure hanging by a thread. Sophie was whispering furiously into her ear, probably trying to calculate the PR damage. I adjusted my cufflinks, exhaled slowly, and thought, welcome to the real exam, sweetheart. This wasn't just payback. This was reclamation. Every insult, every condescending dinner, every time her father called me the handyman husband, tonight, they'd all get their answer. And it started with a door, the one she thought she'd closed on me. Because when you try to shut out the man who built the palace, don't be surprised when he comes back holding the master key. And the best part? I wasn't even angry anymore. I was entertained. There's something magical about watching karma clock in for a night shift, especially when you're wearing the smug grin of the guy who owns the building. The second my shoes hit that marble floor, the energy in the lobby changed. You could feel it, like the air itself suddenly remembered who signed the oxygen contract. The Blue Raven had that signature scent, bergamot, white truffle, a hint of money, that calm luxury that whispers, you're richer than you think. The chandelier above glittered like it was eavesdropping. The staff, God bless them, straightened up as if I'd personally audited their posture. Good evening, Mr. Grant, echoed in unison, the kind of greeting that carried pride, not fear. It wasn't rehearsed. That's the thing about respect. You can't fake it. It's muscle memory. Clara, however, looked like someone had yanked her Wi-Fi mid-live stream. She trailed behind me, expression stuck between panic and disbelief. You could practically see the gears grinding in her head. Wait, did he just walk in like he owns the place? Oh no, he actually owns the place. Sophie clung to her like static electricity, her voice a nervous whisper. Oh my God, Clara, people are staring. Yeah, they were. And not in the way they used to. The pitiful, there goes the quiet husband kind of way. No, this was intrigue, respect, and a touch of scandal, everyone's favorite cocktail. A couple of investors I recognized from board meetings gave me the oh hell look, realizing their little side alliance with my wife might have just aged badly. The concierge, Michael, hurried over, his voice warm and reverent. "Mr. Grant, welcome back, sir. Your penthouse suite has been prepared as usual." Clara's head snapped toward him so fast I thought her diamond earrings might file for workers' comp. "Penthouse," she blurted, voice cracking like a teenager's. Michael blinked, caught between professionalism and curiosity. "Of course, Mrs. Grant. Mr. Grant's suite is always ready. He likes to." "Thank you, Michael," I interrupted smoothly, giving him a nod. "I think Mrs. Grant just forgot how hospitality works." He nodded with a knowing smile and stepped away, probably texting his coworkers something like, "Boss just dethroned his wife live in 4K. I turned to Clara, lowering my voice to that lethal calm she hated. "You hear that, honey? They upgraded me. From broke husband to penthouse owner. Big night for us." She didn't respond, just stared at the floor like it might open up and swallow her whole designer outfit. "Leo," she finally muttered, "can we talk about this privately?" "Oh, I'd love that," I said cheerfully. "But your event seems to be public, and I wouldn't want to make things awkward. Besides, you told me I couldn't come in, remember? We wouldn't want to embarrass the family." She glared, jaw tight, eyes flashing that desperate mix of pride and panic. The same look she gave me years ago when she said, "Don't take risks with that hotel idea." "Yeah, how's that working out for you now, Clara?" The pianist, God bless that intuitive soul, switched tunes right then, flowing seamlessly into my favorite jazz piece, "Fly Me to the Moon." I told him years ago to play it any time I walked in, even if it had been years since I'd actually done so. It wasn't arrogance. It was a reminder, to me, to the staff, to the universe, that this place existed because I dreamed it into being. The irony that it played while my wife stood there looking like she'd just watched her stock portfolio implode? Delicious. I took my time walking down that lobby, each step echoing off marble like a slow clap. People were whispering, phones subtly lifting, faces turning. Clara hated attention when it wasn't scripted. She was used to controlling the narrative, editing the angles, cropping out the truth. But this moment, this cinematic, unscripted reality, was mine. Sophie tugged at Clara's arm. "We should go," she hissed. "People are watching." Clara didn't move. Her pride anchored her. That's the thing about people like her. They'd rather drown in denial than swim in truth. I turned just enough to glance at them over my shoulder. "Don't worry, ladies. I'll try not to embarrass the family. Wouldn't want to ruin that sparkling reputation built entirely on my credit line." A soft gasp rippled from somewhere near the bar. Someone chuckled. The kind of low, stifled laughter you get when everyone wants to laugh, but no one wants to die socially. It was like oxygen to me. Clara's hand twitched toward me, as if she wanted to grab my arm and drag me out, but she didn't. She couldn't. Not tonight. I walked past the front desk where two interns, new hires, watched me with awe. One whispered, "That's him." The other nodded, eyes wide. I winked as I passed, and they almost combusted from excitement. Because, yeah, I'm that boss. The one who remembers what it feels like to be invisible. And tonight, I was making damn sure they saw what it looks like to stop being that. Evan returned to my side, holding a discreet earpiece. "Sir, the ballroom team says the press has started gathering," he said quietly. "Would you like me to limit access?" I grinned. "No limits, Evan. Let them see everything. If I'm going to reclaim my crown, might as well do it under full lighting." He nodded once, expression unreadable but eyes gleaming. He lived for structure, discipline, hierarchy. Watching chaos be politely conquered probably made his year. We moved toward the grand staircase, my marble mile, and every click of my heel felt like punctuation in a story I hadn't finished writing. At the base of the stairs, a small crowd had gathered, guests unsure whether to greet me or Clara. I made that decision easy. "Evening, folks," I said warmly, shaking hands as if this was just another business mixer. "Beautiful night, isn't it? Hope my wife's been taking good care of you while I was detained outside." A few forced laughs, a few nervous coughs, a few very uncomfortable family members realizing this was about to make the morning news. Clara hissed under her breath. "Leo, stop making a scene." "A scene?" I said, leaning closer so only she could hear. "You started the play, darling. I'm just better at dialogue." Sophie tried to pull her away, whispering something about saving face, but Clara stood frozen, humiliated and too stubborn to retreat. That's what pride does. It traps you in place while your world burns politely around you. Evan stepped forward, cleared his throat, and addressed the nearest group of guests. Mr. Grant will be heading up to the executive floor shortly. The board members are eager for the evening's meeting. That was the kill shot. A few jaws dropped. A few people exchanged looks like they'd just realized they'd been networking with the wrong spouse for years. I turned to Evan, nodded, and said loudly enough for the lobby to hear, "Thanks, Evan. I'll stop by the ballroom first. Wouldn't want to miss my wife's big moment." The subtle gasp that rippled through the room was priceless. You could almost hear the collective realization. Oh God, she planned this whole event without telling the owner. As we ascended the staircase, I caught sight of the ballroom doors at the end of the corridor, golden lights spilling out, laughter echoing faintly. The calm before the storm. I glanced down at the lobby one last time. Clara frozen in place, Sophie whispering frantic PR instructions into her phone, guests murmuring like a Greek chorus of judgment. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the way she'd said, "You can't seriously think you're coming in." And just like that, the sympathy evaporated. At the top of the stairs, Evan paused and asked, "Permission to post an extra guard at the ballroom, sir?" I smiled. "No need, Evan. I think everyone in that room is about to guard their own reputation once I walk in." He chuckled softly, the rare kind of smile you only see on a man who's watched justice done right. As the elevator doors to the upper floor opened, I caught my reflection again in the mirrored walls. No longer the ghost husband or the outsider. Just Leo Grant, king of his own marble kingdom, walking tall through the empire he built while everyone else tried to take credit. And somewhere behind me, down in that glittering lobby of lies, my wife was learning that some doors, once closed on the wrong person, don't just reopen. They slam back with style. The doors to the grand ballroom opened like they knew drama was on the menu. The sound hit me first. Laughter, music, the clink of champagne glasses, that shallow kind of joy that smells expensive but feels empty. Clara's exclusive event was in full swing, and judging by the glittering chaos, she'd spared no expense, in my name, of course. The chandeliers sparkled like smug witnesses, catching the reflection of people who smiled too wide and lied too easily. I took one step inside, and the entire room went from orchestra to awkward silence in under 3 seconds. Forks froze midair. A violinist missed his cue. Somewhere near the back, a waiter dropped a tray, the sound echoing like punctuation. Clara's father, the ever-condescending Mr. Lawson, was mid-bite of his steak, and I swear he almost choked on his own arrogance. His face did this slow-motion evolution from confusion to disbelief. "Leo," he stammered, wiping his mouth with a napkin that cost less than my cufflinks. "What are you doing here?" You could practically hear Clara's mental scream from across the room. She was standing near the stage, her perfect posture finally cracking. I smiled. The slow, calm kind that always makes the guilty nervous. "Hosting," I said simply, strolling past tables like a man taking a victory lap. "Welcome to my hotel." The whispers started immediately, soft at first, then spreading like wildfire. Did he say his hotel? Wait, isn't this Clara's event? Oh, this is about to get good. The sound was better than any applause. And then, my favorite part of the night, Mr. Blackwell stood up. The same banker who had, just last month, rejected Clara's desperate request for a small business expansion loan. He shot up from his chair so fast his napkin flew off his lap. "Mr. Grant," he exclaimed, beaming like a man who just found religion. "I didn't know you owned the Blue Raven." The entire room snapped their heads toward him, then back to me. I let the silence breathe, just long enough to let every one of Clara's social climbing neurons short-circuit. "Well," I said, pretending to think. I thought it was common knowledge. But maybe my wife forgot to mention it. You could have heard Sophie's brain crash from the back table. Clara's face turned pale, paler than the overpriced fondant cake she'd probably ordered in triplicate. She tried to laugh it off, that brittle little chuckle she uses when she's about to lose control. "Oh, Leo, you're being dramatic," she said, voice quivering like a violin string. "This event is a partnership." "A partnership?" I interrupted, cocking my head. "That's interesting, because I don't remember signing a co-host agreement or seeing a request to use my property for a private event." Mr. Lawson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Now, son, he started, that patronizing tone slithering back. There's no need to make a spectacle. A spectacle? I echoed, grinning. Mr. Lawson, you've been making a spectacle of me for 10 years. I figured I'd finally return the favor. With catering. The crowd tittered. Someone near the stage snorted, trying to hold back a laugh. Mr. Lawson's wife, Barbara, looked like she'd swallowed her pearls. Leo, dear, this isn't the time. Oh, Barbara, trust me, I said smoothly. This is exactly the time. You've all been so curious about what I actually do for a living. Congratulations, you're standing in it. The laughter started quietly but grew fast, fueled by schadenfreude and champagne. The violinist, sensing the vibe, awkwardly shifted into a softer tune, something dramatic, like a soundtrack to downfall. Clara tried to regain control, her voice sharp. Leo, we'll talk later. Oh, we'll talk now, I said, stepping closer to the microphone the band's singer had just abandoned. The poor guy stepped aside, muttering something about not getting involved in divorces. I picked up the mic and turned to the crowd, every eye locked on me. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, tone casual, almost conversational. Small correction before we continue this wonderful evening. I'm not the plus one tonight. I'm the owner of the venue, the menu, and, if we're being honest, the mortgage on several of your homes. A ripple of laughter, half shocked, half impressed. Clara's breathing quickened. Her father looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. So before you all raise your glasses to my wife's achievements, maybe raise one to the man who funded them. Clara hissed through clenched teeth. Leo, stop this right now. I smiled wider, leaning into the mic. Honey, you said I didn't fit in with your crowd. Turns out your crowd fits in my lobby. The laughter exploded. Even the waitstaff couldn't hide their grins. Evan appeared at the back of the room, arms folded, giving me a subtle nod of approval. This was the kind of justice money couldn't buy. Organic, brutal, televised in real time through every guest's smartphone. I paced slowly across the ballroom floor, talking like a man giving a TED Talk on poetic revenge. See, when I built the Blue Raven, I wanted it to be a place where people felt seen, respected, valued. Funny how I forgot that started at home. The crowd fell silent again, hooked. For years, I stayed quiet while people assumed I was just the guy who builds hotels. That's what they said, right? I glanced at Sophie, who visibly shrank in her seat, as if I'm out there with a hammer and a dream, doing drywall between coffee breaks. More chuckles. And that's fine. I've learned that sometimes the best way to make noise is to wait until everyone else stops talking. I turned toward Clara, and tonight, they finally did. Her lip trembled, but she held her chin up, clinging to the last strands of her dignity. You think this makes you look powerful? She snapped. It makes you look petty. Petty, I said, nodding thoughtfully. Maybe, but if I'm going to be petty, I'd rather do it in the building I own. Wearing the watch you said was too flashy. The audience laughed again, the sound rolling through the room like thunder. Someone shouted, "Tell it, man," which honestly made my night. You see, I continued, some of us build our legacy. Others borrow it, wear it like a dress, and pretend it's couture. Clara's face was frozen, her fake smile cracking under the heat. But don't worry, I said, softer now, my tone dropping to something almost kind. You wanted to show your family and friends that you could make it without me. And you did. You made it right to the ballroom of the man you tried to erase. Dead silence. You could have heard a champagne bubble pop. Mr. Blackwell clapped first, slow, deliberate, like he'd been waiting his whole career to do it. A few others joined in, then more, until the entire ballroom was applauding. I didn't bow. I just smiled and set the microphone down gently. Clara was trembling, eyes glassy, fury and shame fighting for control. She turned away, muttering, "You've ruined everything." I leaned in close, my voice low, private, lethal. "No, Clara. You did that the moment you mistook silence for weakness." Then I straightened up, adjusted my sleeves, and looked around the ballroom one more time. Every face that used to look down on me now looked up. Respect, awe, maybe fear. "Thank you all for coming," I said lightly. "Drinks are on the house, courtesy of the real owner." The applause turned into cheers. I walked off stage, the spotlight following me for a second before fading into applause and murmurs. Evan met me near the exit, handing me a glass of champagne. "Well played, sir." he said with the kind of reverence usually reserved for generals. I took the glass, raised it toward him. To silence, I said, and to endings that finally make sense. As I walked toward the balcony overlooking the city, I could still hear the laughter and applause behind me. But I didn't turn back. That part of my life, the ghost husband, the invisible partner, was over. Tonight wasn't just a revelation. It was resurrection. There's an art to revenge. Most people think it's about rage, about shouting or breaking things, or public scenes with flying martini glasses. Nah, real revenge? It's quieter. It's served with hors d'oeuvres and a complimentary smile. It's watching the people who mocked you politely choke on their own hypocrisy while you enjoy the view. And let me tell you, the Blue Raven Ballroom was the perfect setting for the masterclass. The air buzzed with expensive tension, the kind that smells faintly of truffle oil and fake loyalty. The same crowd that used to see me as Clara's quiet husband was now shifting uncomfortably in their designer seats, realizing they'd just spent the last hour sucking up to the wrong person. My champagne glass was cold in my hand, my reflection clear in the gold-tinted surface of the grand piano nearby. The man staring back wasn't the ghost husband anymore. He was the ghost-turned-host, the one who'd been laughed at, ignored, sidelined, and now stood right in the center of the storm, smiling like he'd just been promoted to Karma's CFO. Clara, meanwhile, looked like her entire internal Wi-Fi had gone down. She stood near the dessert table, her sister Sophie at her side, whispering furiously into her ear. Sophie's nervous tics were practically a fireworks display, hair twirling, phone checking, darting eyes. I could almost hear the panic in her head. This can't be happening. He wasn't supposed to come. He wasn't supposed to be somebody. Clara tried to compose herself, plastering that fake, networking smile she uses when pretending everything's fine. She waved at a few guests, her diamond bracelet trembling ever so slightly. I took a slow sip, then started my casual stroll across the room, the kind of slow walk that makes people nervous, like the shark music in Jaws. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every table I passed seemed to develop sudden, deep interest in their bread rolls. And when I reached Clara's little circle of friends, a bunch of self-congratulating pseudo-entrepreneurs who wouldn't know a balance sheet if it bit them, she tried to intercept me with forced sweetness. Leo, she started, her voice shaky but loud enough to be overheard. You've made your point tonight. Maybe we could. I raised a finger. Just a second. Then I turned to the nearest waiter, Daniel, young kid, hardworking, sharp. Hey, Daniel, I said, loud enough for half the room to hear. Would you mind asking Chef Ramirez to send over the tasting plate I approved earlier? Daniel straightened instantly. Of course, Mr. Grant. He hustled off like a man running for office. Clara blinked, confused. What tasting plate? Oh, you'll see, I said with a grin that could power the lobby lights. I turned back to her audience, all of them watching the exchange like it was the Super Bowl halftime show. You know, I continued conversationally, I should really apologize to everyone. My wife didn't mean to mislead you all by implying she organized this event. She just omitted the small detail that she rented this ballroom from me at a 25% markup. A soft gasp spread across the table. Mr. Blackwell, still riding the high of his earlier applause, chuckled and said, "Brilliant man. You charge your own wife extra." I shrugged modestly. Fair market rate. I don't play favorites. Clara's eyes were daggers. Sophie's mouth opened, then closed again, like she was buffering. Leo, Clara hissed. You're embarrassing yourself. I leaned in slightly, voice smooth as honey. Sweetheart, if anyone here's embarrassed, it's the one paying for tonight's caviar out of a joint account labeled his. The laughter that followed wasn't polite. It was chaotic, infectious, cathartic. A few people actually clapped. One woman, I swear, nearly snorted her Prosecco. Clara's face flushed crimson. You could have told us, she snapped, her voice rising. I tilted my head. Told you what? That you've been renting my building at a 25% premium? That you've been hosting events under the banner of my corporation while pretending to be the visionary behind it? Nah, I figured I'd let you discover it. Like an Easter egg, except this one comes with property rights. Her father finally stood up, his tie askew, his face red. That's enough, young man, he barked, in his best family patriarch voice, which usually only worked on his wife and their cat. You're humiliating your wife in front of everyone. Correction, I said, raising my glass. I'm clarifying a few facts. There's a difference. And for the record, sir, I'm not humiliating her. She just did that all by herself. Mr. Lawson puffed his chest. You've always had an attitude problem, Leo. I smiled. And you've always had a problem with me having attitude. Guess what changed? A few of the younger investors, probably people his firm had rejected over the years, started snickering. I caught Sophie's husband Greg trying to sneak out through the side door, pretending to take a phone call. Classic. Just then, Daniel returned, balancing a silver platter like it contained diplomatic secrets. He placed it on the table beside us, lifting the lid with dramatic precision. Underneath was a beautifully plated dessert, something elegant, minimal, with a handwritten note in chocolate script that read Humble Pie. The laughter that followed shook the room. Even the pianist stopped playing, leaning back to take in the moment. Clara's face froze, and for the first time in years, she looked small. Really small. Thought you could use a slice, I said lightly. Chef says it's his new specialty. Mr. Grant, Daniel said, barely containing a grin. Chef Ramirez sends his regards. Tell him it's perfect, I replied. Daniel nodded and disappeared into the kitchen, probably to tell the whole staff what just happened. Sophie whispered something to Clara, who hissed back, "Stop talking." Her eyes were glassy, her jaw tight. "You're doing this out of spite," she muttered under her breath. I leaned close enough that only she could hear. "No, I'm doing it out of memory. Every insult, every eye roll, every time you told me I wasn't enough, I filed it away like receipts. Tonight's just the audit." She turned away, blinking rapidly, like she might cry. I didn't feel joy watching her crumble, but I felt peace. There's a difference. Mr. Blackwell, now fully committed to the drama, raised his glass. "To Mr. Grant," he announced, "for teaching us all that humility pairs well with truffles." The room erupted in applause again. Clara's family sat frozen, statues at their own funeral. Her father muttered something about needing air and stormed out, followed by Barbara, whose expression screamed, "We'll never recover from this." Sophie looked like she was debating whether to vanish or fake faint. And me? I just stood there, sipping champagne, smiling politely. After a few minutes, the laughter softened into background chatter again. The party continued, but the energy had shifted. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk to me, the man who owned the room. Investors, partners, even a few influencers who'd previously ignored me now swarmed like moths to a very expensive flame. One of them, a smug tech founder who'd once introduced himself to Clara instead of shaking my hand, actually asked for my card. "We should collaborate sometime," he said, smiling too hard. "Sure," I said, handing him one. "But be careful. Collaboration with me tends to make people transparent." He laughed nervously, not quite sure if it was a joke. Clara, meanwhile, had retreated to a corner near the floral arch, staring out at the crowd that had once adored her. Every so often, someone would approach her, whisper something, then drift away. Reputation is fragile. Once it cracks, people don't repair it, they avoid the mess. I walked over slowly, resting my glass on a nearby table. "You should eat something," I said softly. "It's a long fall from that pedestal." She turned toward me, mascara slightly smudged, voice low. "You planned this, didn't you?" "Planned," I said, pretending to think. "No, you planned the party. I just adjusted the lighting." Her lip trembled. "Everyone's laughing at me." "No," I said quietly. "They're laughing because they finally see the truth. There's a difference." She blinked, looking up at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Maybe she didn't. Maybe the quiet man who used to hold his tongue had finally retired, replaced by someone sharper, colder, unapologetically alive. Sophie appeared beside her, arms crossed. "You've made your point, Leo," she said, her voice shaking with anger she didn't quite earn. "Congratulations. You embarrassed my sister in front of everyone." I looked at her, smirked slightly. "Funny. Your sister's been doing that to me for 10 years. I figured she could use the experience." Sophie scoffed. "You'll regret this." I took a step closer, lowered my voice. "The only thing I regret is not inviting the press. But don't worry, somebody's already recording." Her eyes widened as she glanced around. Sure enough, a few guests were filming discreetly. Hashtags were being born in real time. Hashtag the real owner, hashtag Blue Raven bombshell, hashtag married to the cell. The internet was about to feast. And then, because life loves irony, Chef Ramirez himself appeared, immaculate in his white jacket, smiling like a proud father. "Mr. Grant," he said warmly, "would you like us to serve dessert now?" I grinned. "Already did, chef." He chuckled. "I see that." Then, turning to Clara, he added with genuine politeness, "Mrs. Grant, thank you for the event booking. I must say, it's been one of our most memorable evenings." Clara didn't reply. She just nodded weakly, her eyes glassy. As he walked away, Sophie muttered, "You think this is funny?" "Not funny," I said, finishing my drink. "Satisfying." The string quartet struck up a new tune, softer now, romantic even. Guests began to dance again, eager to return to normalcy. But there was no normal for the Lawsons after tonight. They'd built their social tower on my silence, and I'd just pulled the foundation out from under them. I took one last look around the ballroom, the crystal lights, the polished floors, the crowd that once ignored me now hanging on every movement, and exhaled slowly. It wasn't anger I felt anymore. It was release. Jenna, my assistant, appeared by the doorway, phone in hand. "Sir," she said quietly, "would you like me to start drafting the press release about tonight?" I smiled. "Absolutely. Title it, 'Family Blindness Costs Dearly.'" She grinned. Catchy. Across the room, Clara watched me with a mixture of resentment and heartbreak. I could almost read her mind. She was realizing that she'd spent years trying to outshine a man who was never competing. And that realization was the cruelest kind of revenge, because there's no recovery from it. I turned toward Jenna. "Send it to every outlet by morning. Let them see how truth looks under chandeliers." "Yes, sir." Then I looked back one last time at Clara, her trembling hands, her fading crowd, her reflection in the mirrored wall behind her. For a second, I almost pitied her. Almost. Then I remembered the night she told me I wasn't polished enough to attend her business dinners. The time she laughed when her father called me the help. The way she looked through me tonight, right before Evan walked in and the world tilted back in my favor. "Enjoy dessert, Clara," I said quietly as I passed her. "It's the only thing here that's still sweet." Her voice cracked. "Leo, please." But I didn't turn back. Revenge had already been served, on silver trays, under golden lights, witnessed by everyone who'd ever doubted me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like the man standing outside his own palace. I felt like the king walking through his throne room, crown polished, patience rewarded, and every last pretender exactly where they belonged. If you've never watched the aftermath of a social apocalypse in real time, let me paint you a picture. It's a mix of whispered damage control, spilled champagne, and the faint scent of burned ego. That ballroom, just an hour ago full of preened laughter and manufactured smiles, was now a live exhibit in humiliation recovery. You could practically hear the sound of reputations deflating like cheap balloons. I stood near the balcony doors, taking in the view of the city skyline beyond the glass, the lights of downtown gleaming like gold dust scattered across the horizon. My reflection stared back at me in the window, a man finally done pretending to be less than what he built. The chatter behind me was low and anxious, like people trying to gossip without getting caught by karma itself. Clara was sitting at a corner table, shoulders rigid, her once perfect posture collapsing under the weight of reality. Her makeup, once armor, was cracking just enough to show the truth beneath. Sophie hovered nearby, whispering in that frantic "everything's fine" tone people use when everything is not fine. Her husband Greg was pretending to scroll through his phone, which I'm pretty sure wasn't even on. Barbara Lawson, my mother-in-law, was pacing like a senator after a bad poll, clutching her pearls so tight I thought she might choke herself with them. And her husband, the great Mr. Lawson, was out on the terrace, gripping his whiskey glass with both hands, staring at the city like it personally betrayed him. Meanwhile, I was having the time of my life. Not in the loud, triumphant way. No, this was quieter. The satisfaction of balance restored. Years of swallowing my pride condensed into one long, smooth exhale. My assistant Jenna reappeared beside me, clipboard in hand, phone pressed to her ear. "Yes," she was saying into the receiver. "That's correct, Mr. Grant is the sole owner of the Blue Raven Hospitality Group. Yes, the trademark too. You can verify with the registry. Oh, and tell them to spell his name right this time, Giorianti. Thank you." She ended the call, turned to me with that polished efficiency only the unbothered possess. Press release is already scheduled to drop at 8 a.m. I'm coordinating with PR to make sure every outlet tags your official profile, not hers. Perfect, I said, sipping the last of my champagne. Let them get the full picture for once. Jenna smiled slightly, lowering her voice. You know, sir, I've been waiting for this day since the first time I met her. She once told me you were lucky to have married up. I laughed, deep and genuine. She was right. I married up, then built an elevator. Jenna chuckled. Should I have security escort the Lawsons out? Nah, I said, waving a hand. Let them stay a little longer. Watching them squirm is cheaper than therapy. Across the room, Clara's friends, those high society parasites who'd spent years orbiting her spotlight, were now making their quiet exits. They gave her those tight, pitying smiles people give car crash survivors before backing away slowly. A few even stopped by to shake my hand, murmuring things like, so proud of what you've accomplished, Leo, or you're such an inspiration. Ah yes, the great migration of loyalty, like clockwork. Evan, my head of security, reappeared beside me. Everything's under control, sir. The press has already picked up snippets from guests' live posts. I arched a brow. Live posts. He nodded, handing me his tablet. On the screen were clips from various angles. My little mic drop moment in the ballroom, the reveal, the laughter. Hashtags were trending already. Hashtag Blue Raven Reversal. Hashtag So in Disguise. Hashtag Family Blindness. One journalist had even captioned it. He walked in like a ghost, left like a king. That one's good, I said, grinning. Send them a fruit basket. Will do. I walked toward the bar, where a few of the younger investors had gathered around a server offering small bites. The moment they saw me, they straightened, one even clinking his glass nervously. Mr. Grant, one of them said, I just want to say that was, iconic. I mean, no offense to your wife, but you handled that like a boss. I chuckled. No offense taken. And thank you. It's nice to finally be introduced correctly. They laughed, too loudly, but I didn't mind. Every word they said now carried that subtle shift, the respect that comes when truth replaces pretense. For years, I'd let Clara take the spotlight, thinking peace was better than pride. But peace built on lies is just slow erosion. Tonight, I'd rebuilt the foundation. As I was talking, I caught sight of Mr. Lawson re-entering the room. His whiskey glass was empty, his pride even emptier. He approached me, chin tilted, trying to muster the authority he used to wield so effortlessly over me. Leo, he began, his voice forced calm. You could have handled this privately. Privately, I repeated, smiling faintly. You mean the way you privately told your friends I was a burden? Or the way you privately told Clara I was lucky she didn't marry up? Remind me again which part of this family was private. His jaw tightened. You're spiteful. No, I said, leaning closer. I'm thorough. He blinked, stunned by the calmness in my tone. You'll regret embarrassing my daughter like this. I set my glass down, met his eyes. Mr. Lawson, with all due respect, your daughter embarrassed herself the moment she forgot who built the life she's been renting. He opened his mouth to argue but stopped when Evan subtly appeared behind me. Arms folded, presence radiating don't. Mr. Lawson scowled, turned on his heel, and stomped back toward the terrace, muttering something about ungrateful sons-in-law. Jenna rejoined me, tablet still glowing. The clips are spreading fast. Someone from the Herald just requested an exclusive interview. Decline it, I said, smirking. Let the story tell itself. Truth travels faster when it's got good gossip attached. She nodded, amused. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Enjoying, I said, pretending to think. No. Relishing? Maybe. Over by the dessert table, Clara finally stood. Her shoulders were slumped, her composure shattered. She walked toward me slowly, each step hesitant, like approaching a wild animal she used to own. Her voice was soft, but trembling. Leo, can we talk? I glanced at her, then at the guest still lingering, watching discreetly. We are talking, I said coolly. Not here, she whispered. Please. I sighed dramatically, glancing at my watch. Sure, why not? 5 minutes. Executive lounge. She nodded quickly, relief flashing across her face. I followed her up the stairs, Jenna and Evan keeping a discreet distance. The executive lounge was quiet, dimly lit. a contrast to the glittering chaos downstairs. The door closed behind us, sealing in the tension like trapped heat. Clara turned to me, her voice breaking before she even started. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she said. "I just wanted them to respect me, to see me as more than your wife." I raised an eyebrow. "So your solution was to erase me completely?" "I wasn't erasing you," she protested, stepping forward. "I was trying to build something of my own. You don't understand what it's like, Leo, being the woman behind the man. Everyone assumes your success is theirs. I just wanted something that was mine." I crossed my arms. "Then maybe start by not stealing what's mine to make it happen." She winced. "You think I don't know that now? You think I didn't realize the second Evan called you Mr. Grant that I destroyed everything?" I stared at her for a long moment. The anger was still there, but behind it, a tired sort of pity. "Clara, you didn't destroy everything. Just the illusion. You spent years performing this fantasy where you were the boss, the visionary, the name on the marquee. But the truth? You were already standing on a mountain. You just refused to believe it was high enough unless people thought you built it." Tears filled her eyes. "I was proud of you," she whispered, even when I didn't say it. "Yeah," I said, voice steady, because all I heard was the silence between your words. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "You used to believe in me," I said quietly. "Now you believe in your reflection. And when the reflection cracks, you want me to glue it together again." Her lip trembled. "Is this it? Are you ending it?" I gave a humorless laugh. "Clara, it ended the day you locked me out of my own hotel. Tonight was just the encore." She covered her face with her hands, shaking. For a second, I felt a twinge of something. Nostalgia maybe, but it passed. Sometimes closure doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it just comes with finally not caring. "Take whatever time you need to leave," I said, heading for the door. "My lawyers will be in touch next week." "Leo," I paused at the doorway. "For what it's worth," I said softly, "you were incredible at pretending. Maybe next time, don't pick someone who's better at it." Then I walked out. Back downstairs, the atmosphere had shifted again. People were relaxed now, laughter returning, though tinged with that post-storm energy. Evan approached me, handing over a fresh drink. "Everything okay, sir?" "Better than okay," I said, taking a sip. "It's over." "Good," he said. "You deserve peace, not just payback." "Yeah," I murmured. "But sometimes peace is payback." Jenna was talking to one of the reporters who'd snuck in. She looked up, mouth done, and nodded toward me. I gave her a thumbs up. The pianist started a new song, soft, smooth, nostalgic. I walked toward the balcony again, the crowd parting subtly like waves. The city stretched out before me, alive and indifferent. Somewhere below, cars honked, people laughed, the world moved on. And me? I felt weightless. Not happy exactly. Happiness is too simple a word for a night like this. It was more like relief with a side of poetic satisfaction. As I stood there, Evan joined me, hands clasped behind his back. "You know," he said, "most people would have lost their temper. You handled that with precision." "Anger's loud," I said, watching the skyline. "Silence terrifies them more." He nodded. "What's next, sir?" I smiled faintly. "Tomorrow morning? A board meeting. We've got that Tokyo project to finalize. But tonight," I raised my glass toward the glowing blue Raven sign reflected in the window. "Tonight's about remembering why I built this in the first place." "To prove them wrong?" Evan asked. I shook my head. "To prove I didn't need to." He smiled, nodded once, and walked away to give me space. For a while, I just stood there, letting the noise fade behind me. I thought about the man I was 10 years ago. The one who sketched his first design on a diner napkin while Clara laughed, saying, "No one stays at boutique hotels anymore." I thought about every late night, every missed holiday, every "you're wasting your time" that fueled the next breakthrough. And I realized that for the first time, I didn't need anyone's validation to feel successful. I'd already won. Behind me, I heard the faint shuffle of heels. Clara again. She hesitated near the door, her voice soft. "Leo, please don't make me the villain in your story." I turned slightly, enough to meet her reflection in the glass. "You made yourself the villain when you wrote me out of it." Her breath caught, but I didn't turn around. She stood there a few seconds longer, then quietly left. The door clicked shut, and the sound felt final. Jenna appeared once more, holding out her tablet. "Press release just went live," she said. "It's everywhere already." Good. She smiled. Anything else before I head out? Yeah, I said after a moment. Tell Ramirez to send a dessert to the penthouse. She nodded. Same as earlier? Exactly the same. As she walked away, I looked out at the city one more time. My reflection in the window, calm, steady, unbothered, smiled back. For once, I wasn't performing. I wasn't chasing approval. I was just me. Down below, the laughter of the last guests drifted through the air. The party was ending, but the story wasn't. The truth had finally gone public, and for the first time in years, I wasn't the invisible man in the background. I was the headline. And as I lifted my glass to the night sky, I whispered to no one in particular. To silence, patience, and payback. The city lights blinked back like applause. Rooftops always tell the truth. Down below, everyone's still pretending. The valet pretending he likes tips that don't match the car, the influencer pretending her relationship is real, the guest pretending the night wasn't an absolute bloodbath. But up here, on the terrace of the Blue Raven penthouse, the air doesn't play games. It cuts through the noise, clean and cold, whispering only facts. And the fact was this: I'd won. Not the loud, confetti kind of win. The quiet, surgical kind that settles deep in your bones. The kind you don't toast to. You just exhale, knowing you'll never have to explain yourself again. The city stretched out below like an ocean made of light, and for the first time in years, I wasn't looking at it with a what's next mindset. I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't proving anything. I was just there, breathing, existing as the man who survived being underestimated by everyone who claimed to love him. Evan stepped out onto the terrace, the heavy door closing softly behind him. The man moved with military precision even in relaxation mode. He was in his dark suit, tie slightly loosened, the embodiment of controlled calm. You handled that with class, sir, he said, handing me a cigar like it was part of a ceremonial ritual. I took it, rolling it between my fingers. Revenge, I said, lighting it with slow satisfaction, is best served indoors, preferably in your own hotel. Evan grinned, that rare crack in his stoicism. I'll make sure to have that embroidered on the uniforms. I laughed quietly. Do that. In gold thread. He leaned against the railing beside me, eyes scanning the skyline. They're still cleaning up downstairs, he said. Your wife's family left 20 minutes ago. Looked like a funeral procession. Appropriate, I murmured. They came to celebrate a fantasy, and they buried it instead. Evan nodded. Mrs. Grant stayed behind for a while. Then she left with her sister. I blew out a stream of smoke, watching it curl into the night. Good. Let her go. He hesitated. If I may ask, are you going to forgive her? I smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. Forgiveness isn't on the menu tonight, Evan. Closure is. And it's already been served. He studied me for a moment, then nodded again. Understood, sir. He turned to leave, but paused at the door. For what it's worth, the staff's been talking all night. They're proud. You reminded them why they work for this company. You reminded all of us. That hit differently. Not pride, something deeper. Responsibility. Thanks, Evan, I said. Go home. Get some rest. You've earned it. He gave me a brief salute and left, the door closing behind him with a soft click. And just like that, it was just me, the city, and the ghost of everything I'd built. I walked to the edge of the terrace, the wind picking up, tugging gently at my shirt. Below, cars crawled like glowing ants through the midnight streets. From up here, the noise was just a hum, like white noise from a life I'd outgrown. I thought about the last 10 years, the sacrifices, the nights sleeping in unfinished hotel rooms, the humiliation of dinners where Clara's family used me as their favorite anecdote. Oh, Leo's trying another project. Oh, he's still chasing that hotel dream. Well, at least he's good with his hands. Maybe he can fix the sink next time. I'd smiled through all of it, swallowing pride for peace. But peace built on condescension is counterfeit. It fades the second you stop apologizing for breathing. When I first met Clara, she had this light. Not the fake socialite sparkle she cultivated later, but something genuine. She believed in my ideas, until those ideas started working. Then belief turned into envy. She couldn't stand that the man she'd chosen to build up no longer needed her validation to stand tall. She wanted a project, not a partner. And the day she realized she couldn't manage me like one of her family's social plans, she started rewriting the story. That's how I became the husband in hospitality, not the founder. Not the CEO. Just the guy in the background, serving hors d'oeuvres at his own banquet. But tonight, the roles had flipped. The people who used to clap for her were now whispering about her. And I didn't even have to raise my voice. That's the thing about truth. It doesn't shout. It waits. Behind me, the door opened again. I didn't have to turn to know who it was. Clara's presence was distinct. Her perfume, that faint click of her heels, the hesitation in her movements when she wasn't performing. Couldn't resist one last scene? I asked without looking back. She sighed softly. You always think I'm performing. I turned around slowly, cigar glowing faintly in the dark. Am I wrong? She stepped closer, her eyes tired now, stripped of the sparkle that used to fool crowds. She wasn't the glamorous hostess anymore. She looked human, maybe for the first time in years. I didn't come here to fight, she said quietly. I came to apologize. I tilted my head. Apologize? That's new. Go ahead, I'll allow it. She winced, but didn't back down. You didn't deserve what I did to you. I got caught up in the appearances. My family, their expectations, the pressure. I started caring more about how things looked than how they were. And I took you for granted. That's a pretty way to describe betrayal, I said. She flinched. It wasn't betrayal. Oh no. I stepped closer, my voice calm but sharp. You erased me from my own success, Clara. You built a version of us where I was an accessory. You turned our life into your PR campaign. And when I didn't play the role you wrote for me, you locked me out of the very building that bore my name. Her eyes glistened. I was wrong. I know that now. But, Leo, you have to understand. I felt invisible too. My family never saw me unless I was attached to someone successful. When you started rising, I panicked. I thought if I didn't outshine you, I'd disappear again. For a moment, I didn't answer. Because beneath the vanity and deceit, there it was, the truth. Pathetic and raw. I let out a slow breath. You didn't need to outshine me, I said quietly. You just needed to stand beside me. But you turned partnership into competition. And no marriage survives when love becomes a scoreboard. Tears rolled down her cheeks, catching the city light. I miss you, she whispered. I almost laughed. You miss control. She shook her head. No, I miss us. The version before the hotels, before the money. When we were broke and still believed in something bigger than ourselves. I looked away, down at the city again. That version of us died the day you stopped believing in me. There was a long silence. The kind that hangs heavy because there's nothing left worth saying. Finally, she whispered, is there any way back? I turned back toward her, really looking at her. Back? I repeated softly. No, Clara. You burned the map. Her shoulders sagged. She looked small again, fragile, almost. I could have comforted her, maybe even forgiven her, but forgiveness isn't a switch. It's a door that locks from the inside, and mine was sealed shut. I'll sign whatever papers you need, she said finally. I won't contest anything. I nodded. Good. I'll have my lawyer send them over. She hesitated again, then said softly, you don't have to be cruel. I smiled faintly. Cruelty would have been letting you keep pretending. Her lip trembled, but she didn't speak. Instead, she turned and walked toward the door. Just before she reached it, she paused, her hand resting on the handle. You were right, she said without looking back. Silence is louder. Then she left. The door shut behind her, and just like that, the last thread of the illusion snapped. The night felt lighter somehow. I took another drag of the cigar, the smoke curling into the wind like closure itself. A few minutes later, Evan returned briefly with a tray, 2 glasses of bourbon and a note from Chef Ramirez that simply read, to new beginnings. I chuckled and raised the glass in silent thanks. You always know how to end a story, I muttered to no one in particular. As I drank, I thought about what tomorrow would bring. The press release was already viral. By morning, every financial outlet from New York to Tokyo would be running the same headline. The Silent Owner. How Leo Grant built an empire while the world slept on his name. Investors would call. Opportunities would double. Competitors would sweat. But more than that, the people who dismissed me, her family, her friends, the arrogant dinner guests who used to call me the handyman husband, they'd all have to face the fact that the man they mocked had been writing their checks all along. It's strange how power doesn't feel the way you think it will. You imagine it's loud, dramatic, a symphony of validation. But in truth, it's quiet. It's peace. It's walking through your own hotel at 2 a.m., hearing the echo of your footsteps on marble, knowing every square inch exists because you refuse to quit. I finished the bourbon and leaned on the railing, the city wind tugging gently at my sleeves. Down below, traffic lights blinked red and green in rhythm, life moving forward as if none of this mattered. And maybe that's the point. It wasn't about them anymore. It was about me reclaiming my story. When I finally went back inside, the penthouse was dim and still. The staff had left everything perfect: the linen sheets, the soft glow from the sconces, the faint scent of cedar and mint. On the coffee table sat a small envelope, embossed with my initials. Jenna's handwriting on the note inside read, "Press is calling it the night of revelation. Congratulations, Mr. Grant. The world finally knows." I smiled. For once, I didn't feel the need to respond. I loosened my tie and sat by the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the first hints of dawn start to paint the sky. The city looked softer in that light, less like a battlefield, more like a promise. For years, I thought vindication would come in some grand, cinematic way: lawsuits, confrontations, dramatic exits. But it turned out, real victory doesn't need witnesses. It's in the silence after everyone leaves. It's in knowing you don't owe anyone an explanation. And as the first rays of sunlight hit the Blue Raven logo on the opposite building, I realized something simple yet profound. I'd spent half my life chasing acknowledgement from people who never intended to give it. But when you stop chasing, the applause finally finds you. That's when I understood. This wasn't just about Clara, or her family, or proving my worth to anyone. This was about reclaiming something they never could touch: my peace. I stood, finished the last sip of bourbon, and looked out at the city that had doubted me and crowned me in the same breath. "Here's to family blindness," I said softly, raising the glass one last time. "It really does cost dearly." And as I set the empty glass down, the sun broke fully over the skyline, golden lights spilling across the rooftops. My reflection in the glass merged with the horizon, and for the first time in a long time, I saw exactly who I was. No titles, no pretense, no performance. Just Leo Grant, the man they underestimated, and the empire they'll never control.